Hey there, it's me, John Sifferman. Long time no see. Been a long time since I've made a YouTube video, and I've been really itching to start creating again. So I've got to make it very easy for myself. I literally just set up the camera, couple of lights, because I have them now. I've been borrowing them from my dad for some other stuff. And I've got some green tea. This is Old Man on the Mountain from 603 Perfect Blend. So if you're in or around New Hampshire and you are a tea drinker, this is some really good stuff. It's one of my favorite blends. And I got my Carhartt sweatshirt and my No Name sweatpants, and so I'm ready to go here in the home gym with the bunny rabbits off to the side, which I will not show you on camera because it would be too frightening. They are very dangerous. Most people are afraid of the dog because we have a big dog, but it's the bunnies you really got to look out for. So anyway, I wanted to talk with you about something that's been on my mind a lot for several years, and something that hopefully can help you, and that is, how should we train as we get older? You know, you get into your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and your training needs to adjust in some ways based on your age. And I think a lot of people, especially men in particular, hear that? You hear that? You hear those claws? Dangerous. But a lot of people, especially men, as we get older, we get very frustrated because we're trying to train the way we did when we were 20 or 30, and it just doesn't work when you have an older body with more wear and tear, more baggage. You know, none of us ever are a blank slate. We always have some pre-existing conditions, and those tend to add up over the years, right? Especially over decades of, you know, just using your body, maybe misusing your body, maybe abusing your body, and probably the worst of all is disusing your body, not using your body. You combine any combination of those together and it has pretty bad effects. And none of us are perfect. None of us are gonna, you know, get out of this thing alive, and none of us are gonna ever achieve the pinnacle of health and fitness that doesn't exist. Mastery is just a concept to pursue. And yeah, you can master certain things, but you're never going to master everything. You're never going to master all aspects of life. It's impossible. But we can strive for certain goals. And this is something I want to encourage you. It's something that I believe, and I guess I would challenge you, or not a challenge, I guess I would ask you if you really believe the same thing. And that is, I believe that humans are meant to be strong and healthy and capable and independent for a lifetime, into old age, into your 70s, 80s, and 90s. And yeah, you might get way up there and become a little bit less independent, but you can still absolutely be healthy and sharp and physically capable of taking care of yourself and maybe even others for a lifetime. And that's something I believe. And yes, there are always exceptions, and there are so many factors that are within our control and some that are outside of our control. And so I say that as just a disclaimer because that's reality. But there is so much we can do to set ourselves up for success. And it's not a crazy sacrifice. It's change is hard, being consistent is hard, but it's very doable. And I think it's an ambitious but very doable goal to stay healthy, strong, and capable for a lifetime. And that's what everybody wants, but it's hard. And all of us need help sometimes getting there. I've needed help with different things throughout my fitness journey, for sure. And I'm considered an expert, which seems silly to me because the more I learn, the more I realize how little I know. But that's just a fact of life. So why bother, I guess, is where I want to start. Like, why bother trying to strive for better health and fitness? Because it makes such a difference in your day-to-day life, and because over a lifetime, if you don't make your health and fitness priority, after 10, 20 years of neglecting yourself, life becomes very hard. You know, first of all, your survival rate goes down. So your lifespan, or your all-cause mortality risk, your longevity, like all of these things just get worse if we don't take care of ourselves. And so if you'd like to live a long life, like, yeah, you should take care of yourself. But the one that's more important to me is, like, I don't really care about how many years I get. Like, yeah, I do. Like, yeah, sure, I'd like to make it to whatever, 80 or 90. That'd be great. Maybe with medical technology advancing as fast as it does, we can get a little further. But like, best case scenario, 100, 110 maybe. And the real, like my perspective, like my worldview is that I'm going to be dead a lot longer than I've been alive. And I'm actually looking forward to death in some ways. That might sound difficult to digest, but because of my Christian faith, I have a future to look forward to and to hope in, and that I genuinely believe in, and that shapes my everyday decisions and gives me hope that even if I don't make it to 60 or 70 or 80, or if I'm not healthy, or if I struggle with cancer or other hardships, like something better is waiting for me on the other side. And so a lot of what I'm sharing in this video is rooted in that belief, because our beliefs impact our values and our priorities and our goals, right? You know, the things you believe about the world to be true impact the stuff that you do on a day-to-day basis. But what I wanted to share is that if you don't take care of yourself, if you don't pursue strength and mobility and efficient movement and just a healthy body composition, like all the things that we tend to associate with health and fitness, if you don't do that, life is going to be very, very hard. And that's, for the vast majority of people, that's completely preventable with just some disciplined daily steps and habits and things that we can pick up over the years. And it's not a 12-week program. This is stuff that you got to ingrain into your thinking and your daily activities. And that is what the people who really succeed and stay healthy, strong, and capable for a lifetime and defy the odds, that's what they do. They don't follow these crazy routines, these extreme training programs. They do baby steps that compound over a long time by gradually integrating more and more habits into their day-to-day life. Things that I could do this for the rest of my life. I'm not trying to complete a 90-day program, because what am I going to do after that? Another extreme 90-day program? Like, that just doesn't make any sense to me. And there's a time and a place for programs. I follow programs. I've followed programs my whole life. I write programs for myself and for other people I've worked with. Programs are great, but we don't just need another program. We need practices. We need habits. We need consistent things that we can do day in and day out, whether we're on a program or not. So I'm going to have some tea, because I had a cold a couple weeks ago and I still haven't kicked it. All right. So as we get older, a lot of things change. We naturally start accumulating wear and tear, right? And that tends to show up as extra body fat, aches and pains, joint problems, lack of range of like immobility, stiffness, inability or challenges doing basic activities like walking long distances, climbing stairs, getting up and down from the ground, getting into a squat position. These things just pile up. We also naturally lose muscle mass as we age, and that's a problem, because if you have less muscle mass, then you are naturally going to be weaker. You're going to have a weaker metabolism. You're just going to have a weaker body if you have less muscle mass. You are weaker overall. And that's not to say that bodybuilder is what we need to go for, like maximize the muscle mass as much as possible, but you do need a certain amount of muscle mass to remain healthy and remain strong. And but part of the aging process is that we just naturally lose it. It's called sarcopenia. It just happens to everybody naturally. You do nothing and this will still happen to you. And so doing nothing is still a choice. So I would say we have to do something to try and preserve that muscle mass, to preserve our strength and our quality of life, because you see a very clear correlation between loss of muscle mass, weaker metabolism, and an increase in health problems, disease, inability to perform very basic everyday tasks that are crucial to being independent. And we all want to be independent, right? Maybe we don't care about it until we lose that ability to be independent, because we just don't think about it. But that is very important to all of us, I think. And I certainly do not want to get older and have to depend on other people for very basic everyday tasks. That sounds horrible. And that would, to me personally, because of my values, that would feel like I was a failure or I failed in that area. And maybe I will. And God is gracious. And the people in my life who love me are gracious. We take care of each other, right? And that's what we do. But I don't want to put my family, my wife, my kids, in a position where I am super dependent on them, and they have to carry some of the weight that I should have been carrying myself because I love them and I care about them, and it's tapping into my beliefs and values again. So our joints wear out naturally. So cartilage, connective tissues, your tendons, your ligaments naturally just starts wearing out, gets stiffer as part of the aging process. Some of it could be literally worn away. You could have some tears here and there because of traumatic incidents, XYZ. That's just all part of the aging process. And because of all of these things combining, we lose our ability to move in very basic ways. The things that we notice the most that are probably the most commonly talked about is balance and getting up and down from the ground engagement. Because as we get older, we lose our balance, right? More easily. And that can lead to people falling. And falling for the elderly is one of the biggest risks. If you fall, past a certain age, when you reach a certain age and a certain level of frailty, if you fall, that can be a traumatic, life-changing incident that dramatically increases your risk of dying sooner, your all-cause mortality. And so as part of this natural aging process, all of these things get a little harder. It's harder to maintain muscle. It's harder to keep a strong metabolism. It's harder to remain mobile and flexible. It's harder to keep moving and doing basic things like balancing, running, jumping, you name it, you go through the full spectrum of human movements. It all gets harder. So what do we do about it, right? There are a lot of theories. My approach is, I think not my approach, an approach that I have landed on in my life from, a couple of decades, more than a couple of decades of education and training and coaching others. What I've landed on is that the best approach for aging populations, I would say anybody over the age of 35, but especially 40s, 50s, 60s. The older you get, the more important this stuff becomes. It's strength training, it's mobility training, it's cardiovascular training, and it's some type of movement skill practice or training. Those are some of the most important things to be incorporating into your lifestyle. Not just an exercise program, which is like a thing that we do and then we stop doing it, but your lifestyle, how you move throughout the day, and how you're making sure you get your heart rate up on a regular basis, that you really put some effort in and you sweat. And maybe that's in a traditional exercise session. Maybe you go for a run, or you do some cycling, or what have you, jump rope, anything. There's all kinds of things we can do. But maybe it just becomes a part of your life. Maybe you're not going to cycle in your basement on your bike, but maybe you start biking to work, or biking to church, or biking somewhere. Which adds a little bit of activity into your life. And those decisions to incorporate more movement into everyday life in small or large ways, those really add up, and they are very important. Movement is like the fountain of youth. Movement, physical activity, physical recreation, exercise, that is the fountain of youth. That is probably what's going to make the biggest impact. And so many other things are important too: sleep, nutrition, stress management, a sense of purpose, community. All of these things contribute to better health, and many others. But movement, physical movement, natural movements, exercise, strength training, cardiovascular training, mobility and flexibility work, yoga, there's a lot of different forms of it. And so it's great we have options. So if you have preferences or things you really enjoy, you can do a lot of different things. But these are the things that are going to lead to us aging so much better and being so much more healthy and capable and independent for a lifetime. So the key is that we do them, we work smarter, not just harder. We do need to work hard, but working smarter it becomes even more important as we get older. When you're 40, you can't train like you were 20. You got to be more strategic. You got to be more sustainable. And so I want to talk about how to do that a little bit here. One of the first things you can do that nobody likes to hear and most people ignore, and sometimes I ignore, if I'm being honest, is using proper warm-ups before exercise sessions, especially vigorous exercise sessions. Like if you're doing some strength training or some interval training or anything that's moderate to high intensity, those warm-ups become really important to get your heart rate up, to get your joints prepared, to get things lubricated before you start, lifting a heavy load or doing a maximal effort or near maximal effort. Warm-ups become very important. And so if you're used to skipping the warm-ups and you're getting older, you're too old to skip those. Like you got to start doing them. Like it's careless, and it's over time it's going to lead to problems. Eventually something's going to give. You're going to pull a hamstring or hurt your back or something simply because you don't warm up. And it's just a reality of life. And yes, there is a part of me that's like, well, in an emergency situation, I'm not going to be able to warm up. This is just a little funny thing that I think. And I'm like, so I'd like to be able to just perform in an instant. Like, man, little kid wanders into the road and I got to sprint and get that kid before he gets hit, right? Sure, that's great. That's ideal. That in a perfect world, that's great. And in the moment, you might not have time to warm up or put your shoes on in an emergency situation. But for physical training, like we're taking time to get better. Shouldn't we do that in a smart way, a wise way, strategically? Shouldn't we do that in a way that's not going to increase our risk of injury beyond an acceptable level? Because with all training, there is some risk of injury. We can't avoid risk in life. We can just choose the risks that we're more comfortable with. So warming up, very important. Cool downs also. So there's a lot of different thoughts on what a proper cool down entails. I have my own methods, and I won't get into the specifics of what those entail, but you want to make sure that, I guess in a broad sense I can say, you want to make sure that the work you did in training is not leading to overcompensations or over specializations throughout your body. And so you want to have movement or stretches or other tools in your toolbox to make sure that you are compensating for hard training. Because when you do a really hard leg workout, heavy squats or something like that, or doing some running or some sprinting, things they get tightened up, right? You're pumped up, things get tighter by the end of the session. And if you just ignore that and you just simply rest, you will recover, you will get a lot better. But over time, over months of training, that will lead to imbalances throughout your body. And you want to compensate for those. And a cool down is a great time to do it. It's not the only time that you have to do it, but it's an optimized time to do it. Another thing that we need to do is drink more tea. And while we're drinking more tea, is make sure that we're using exercises that are appropriate for our skill and conditioning level. Because you could be very strong, but still perform an exercise in an incorrect or inefficient way, in an unskilled way. And you could be very weak, but perform an exercise perfectly. And the way that you do that is by choosing an exercise that is appropriate for your level of skill and conditioning. And so if you can't do full push-ups, do knee push-ups. And I know that's maybe a little ego check, but humility is really important when you're talking about training for a lifetime. If you're really, if you have a big ego and you start ego lifting, ego running, pushing yourself a little too hard, your body's gonna respond to that with an injury. That's just a little prophetic warning for you. And so we want to make sure we're using exercises that align with our skill and conditioning level. We don't want to try things that are too hard for us. Basically, we got to put our dues in. And so you got to figure out, all right, what are the exercises I'm going to do? Do I need to modify these based on my current conditioning level or my skill level? Is this too advanced of an exercise for me? That's really important. And if you just jump into some of the intermediate and advanced stuff and you're still a beginner, it's gonna lead to problems. And maybe you read an article online that says, oh, these are the 5 best exercises for XYZ. And you're like, oh, well, I should do those. Well, what that article might not tell you is that your body isn't ready for that. Like, you shouldn't be doing XYZ until you can do A, B, C. You need to be able to, you need to know how to keep your core tight. You need to be able to keep those shoulders stabilized. Like, whatever goes into that exercise, if you're jumping 2 steps ahead of where you are right now, it's going to lead to problems. And this is if you're not a fitness coach, this can be really hard to determine on your own, because we don't learn this stuff in physical education classes. If you even had physical education classes as a kid, like, none of this stuff is taught. And so you got to be your own kind of researcher and advocate to figure out what are the best exercises for your skill and conditioning level. And so, for example, if you haven't exercised in years, or haven't exercised in a certain way in years, like say you haven't done any plyometrics in a long time, don't start with box jumps on your first day. Start with just some little hops and see how your body responds. Maybe some jumping jacks or some jump rope for a few minutes and see what happens. Can you do those without pain? Can you do them with good technique, good coordination, without a really high impact on your body? And then how does your body handle it over the next few days? Like, do you recover from that, or does it unearth a pre-existing condition, something that was already going on there that it gets worse when you do that? Like, don't jump into the really intermediate advanced stuff. Start with very basic rudimentary stuff and build up gradually. Eventually, almost anybody with 2 good legs can do box jumps. I don't care if you're 80 years old. You can absolutely do box jumps at a skill and conditioning. I almost said age appropriate. That is not true. I need to get that out of my head. At a skill and conditioning appropriate level. So when we're older, recovery takes longer, right? You might have been able to train 4 or 5 days a week when you were younger. You might have been able to train a little bit harder when you were younger, but now you need a little bit of extra time to recover from those training sessions. And you're only as strong as you can recover from, or your training is only as effective as what you can recover from. That's what I was trying to say. And so recovery needs to be a really high priority. What does that look like? Quality sleep. Above everything else, you need to get enough quality sleep for you. And that's a very personal amount, but it needs to be good quality sleep. If you ignore that, if you neglect that, if you are not sleeping well, you're going to have a very hard time getting healthy, or let alone fit and strong. People do it, and everybody has different sleep needs. The vast majority of people need 7 to 8 hours a night. Some people need a little more, maybe 9 or a little more hours. And then there's a very few people, but they are out there, who can get by with less than 7 hours, 4, 5, 6 hours, and they're fine. They are genetic mutants or something. I really envy them. I shouldn't envy them, but I do. But we all need a certain amount of high quality sleep. And if we are not getting as much as we need, then everything else we do is going to be harder. It literally affects almost every aspect of our health, and certainly our ability to recover from training. And so sleep's really important. Nutrition is another one. If you don't give your body the nutrients that you need, not just the energy, but the macronutrients and the micronutrients that we need to stay healthy, like, something's going to give. Like, you're going to have problems. Nutrition is a very loaded subject, very emotionally charged subject for a lot of people, controversial. There's a lot of different approaches to nutrition, which is why I tend to stay away from sharing a lot on nutrition. Like, I'll share concepts and principles that pretty much everybody agrees with. We should eat whole natural foods, make sure we get enough vegetables, enough protein, fiber, etc. That's all just good nutrition advice, but you need to figure out how to get the nutrition you need to recover. And this is not something you're going to figure out in a 6-week diet. This is something that, it takes years to figure out what works best for you. And I think adjusting our mentality on the timelines is very important. It's reality, and it might be discouraging, because maybe we all want instant gratification. today in American culture, especially. We want it right now, but our bodies don't work that way. You can't change everything overnight. And even a few weeks, a few months, like, yeah, you can definitely get some great results in the right direction, but you're not going to change everything about your life in a few weeks or months. It takes years to go from very weak, unfit, unhealthy to very fit, strong, and capable. It's just the reality. And I think if we adjust our expectations, we'd all be better off for that. But yeah, recovery takes a long time when we get old. It doesn't take a long time. It takes longer when we're older. And so sleep and nutrition are the most important aspects of recovery, way more important than any so-called active recovery protocols or exercises. If you're not getting the basics done with sleep and nutrition, like, I don't care how much you cold plunge, how much you sauna, how many supplements you take, like, supplements is a part of nutrition, but it's a very small part of nutrition. We tend to make it more important or assume it's going to have a bigger impact than it really does, or that the research shows it really does. And every supplement company is angry that I just said that. But I don't care. I'm not affiliated with any supplement companies. I'm a little more affiliated with the research that says supplements can be helpful, but we tend to overplay their effectiveness in the grand scheme of things. So yeah, sauna, cold plunge, cold showers is all great. I do all of that stuff. It's definitely helpful. Mobility work, yoga, breathing regiments. There's so many things that can enhance recovery, but you got to get the basics in place first. Put the big rocks into the jar before you start filling it with the pebbles and the sand and etc. Focus on the stuff that's going to make the biggest difference. And I understand, I should probably empathize with you. I understand that sleep and nutrition can be very hard. I have struggled with both of them. I've struggled with sleep a lot more, especially after becoming a parent, especially after other circumstances in my life that I won't share with you. But I get it. It's really hard. And sometimes you need help to help you with that. And that can look like a lot of different things. But I needed help with sleep, mainly to get my mindset right about it. And reading a certain book was extremely helpful to me. I can't remember what it's called. I'm sorry. If I can figure it out, I'll put it in the description below. To adjust my perspective on sleep, because in my case, for example, when I was young, I slept like a log. I was like a dead man when I slept. I would just lay down and I would fall asleep in a minute, and it was like I didn't even move all night. I just felt like I wake up refreshed and amazing. And then as I got older, sleep became more of a challenge. So my life got more complicated, and you have more stressful things to think about, and things that wake you up in the middle of the night. Like, sleep became difficult. And I had to adjust my mindset on what healthy sleep looks like for me. And I had to realize that as I've gotten older, as we get older, as people get older, we don't need as much sleep as we did when we were younger. And it took me a little while to realize that, okay, maybe I don't need 9 hours of sleep like I used to. Maybe I can do fine with 8 or 7 or even less sometimes, as long as it's not a lot less than that for too long. And so I had to work through that on my own. So I get it. Sleep is really hard for a lot of people. I've got a pretty good handle on my nutrition. There have been times in my past where I struggled with it, high school, for example. But that one just hasn't been as hard for me. But it's very hard for a lot of people, and I get that. And it's because it's complicated, and because food affects us. It affects our hormones. It affects all kinds of things. And so I get it. And that's why it takes years to work through this stuff. You're not going to change it all overnight. Another thing that we need to do to be more strategic is listen to your body. You've heard that over and over again, probably throughout your life. But what does that actually look like? It's easier said than done. Like, okay, I'm sitting here. I mean, yeah, we can always take a moment and just kind of do a self-assessment, a scan. Like, if I do that right now, I notice, okay, my knees are kind of bothering me a little bit because I've been kneeling here for a while, so maybe I should shift here. This feels better. And fun fact for life, sitting on the ground is really good for you, and changing positions is really good for you. Every one of these positions that we can sit in has some physiological effects, helps with hip mobilities, flexibility, hamstrings, all kinds of things up and down the chain. And so if you're ever sitting on the floor and it's uncomfortable, which it is for a lot of people unless you do it regularly, just change it up. Find a way to make it more comfortable. Sit on something a little bit higher. Use your hands for a little bit of support, a little kickstand. There are more efficient ways to do it, but there's really no right or wrong way to do it. Movement is very, very good for us as long as it's not reckless. And I've found that we have a lot of margin when it comes to safe, effective movement. But yeah, we got to listen to our body. And how this translates for me is not pushing too hard when I'm training. And so not being very mindful of what's going on with my body when I'm training. And so if something is not just uncomfortable, but painful, staying away from that. Like, oh, whatever's going on there, I need to stop doing that right now and find something else to do if something causes pain. And so, I was once taught the rating of perceived discomfort scale from 1 to 10, 1 being no discomfort whatsoever, 0 pain, 10 being worst pain you've ever felt in your life. And this can be a helpful tool. I think in training, generally, if you can stay below a 4, it's probably a safe activity for you, safe exercise for you. But if things get to that 4 or beyond, and it's like, okay, this is starting to really bother me. This is not just me exerting myself. This is not just me feeling fatigued or exhausted. There's a problem here. You got to stop. You got to find something else to do. And that's really important. So that's part of the listen to your body. The other part is we want to make sure that we're using good technique when we're training. And this needs to be learned because we aren't born knowing how to do any exercise. We are born with an innate, instinctive, natural human movement skills. Walking, running, jumping, crawling, climbing. Like, there's so many things that we innately do, but we don't innately learn how to do them efficiently and with a maximum amount of safety and minimum amount of energy expenditure. That doesn't come naturally, the efficient part. And so if you, like, for example, you got a lot of runners out there who are all doing this natural human movement, running. We should all be able to run. If you got 2 good legs, even if you don't, like, there's ways to make it happen with technology today. But we can all run, but we can't all necessarily run efficiently. And when we don't run efficiently with good technique, that maximizes safety, minimizes energy expenditure, and also maximizes performance, being able to run further, faster, longer, more often. When we don't perform in that way, eventually we get injured. And running is one of the sports that has the highest rates of injury. I've seen different statistics, anywhere from 70 to 90+% of runners, depending on how they're categorized, deal with running injuries on a regular basis. And it's not necessarily because we aren't meant to run, it's because so many people are not running appropriately. They're not using good technique. They're training too hard or going too far, too fast, too soon. Or they're not a balanced athlete. Like, maybe they just run and they don't do anything else. And so they have all these other weaknesses and imbalances. And maybe they don't compensate from their training. Like, they're doing all this running, which leads to super compensations throughout the body, overcompensations throughout the body. And they don't compensate for those. They don't address those. And so over time, things get all out of whack. And many other reasons. Footwear can play into it, weak core, immobility, sitting down for hours and hours and hours every day certainly affects us up and down the chain, and that can lead to an injury if you start running on a regular basis. So all of these things are connected. It's never just one thing usually that leads to an injury. But you have to listen to your body. when you're training. And so that's using good technique, making sure that you're moving in an efficient and effective way. All right, what else do I want to talk about? Gonna have another sip of tea. This is some really good stuff, Old Man on the Mountain. So I think some of the things that would be like a common mistake for older trainees is not doing enough strength training and not pushing yourself hard enough with strength training, or pushing yourself too hard. Another common one is doing too much cardio and neglecting strength. So many people tend to specialize in their training based on their strengths or their preferences, what they enjoy. And probably the most common mistake I see actually is those specializations, like I was talking about with running. Like, oh, I just love running, and so I go running. It's like, well, okay, well, that's great. I'm glad you love it, but if you only do this, you're gonna eventually get burned out, injured, and be unable to do this anymore. So you gotta treat, if running is your thing, or if weightlifting is your thing, or if yoga is your thing, or whatever your thing is, dancing, martial arts, rock climbing, hiking, pogo sticking, whatever your thing is, you got to make sure that you are not so specialized in that the rest of your body, or not the rest of your body, that the areas of your body that are not positively impacted by that and maybe negatively impacted by that are being neglected. And so if you love weightlifting, but you never do any cardiovascular exercise, that's a super common mistake. And the opposite, if you love the endurance stuff, if you're a marathoner or a triathlete, but you don't lift any weights or do calisthenics or any kind of strength training, that's going to lead to problems. Or maybe you love yoga or other gentler forms of exercise, qigong, tai chi, what have you, but you don't focus on strength or cardiovascular exercise, like you're going to have problems. Like we are meant to be generalists. We're meant to be able to do a lot of different activities at a moderate ability level. We're not going to ever run as fast as a cheetah, let alone a squirrel. We're never going to be able to swim as well as a dolphin or even a goldfish. We're just not built for that. Like, we're generalists. Yes, we can run, we can swim, we can lift, we can crawl, and we have probably the most diverse set of movement abilities of any creature. But we're not necessarily going to be the best at them. And so I think there's a lesson in that, is that we are supposed to practice a lot of these things. And when we do, we're much better off for it. And so don't get so specialized in one area. Don't just focus on your strengths or preferences. Do a little bit of everything, or at least the main categories: strength training, cardiovascular training, mobility, flexibility training, and movement skill training. Those are kind of my top four, if you will. So yeah, but it's super common to ignore at least one of those. The strength guys never stretch out. The marathon runners never lift weights. And so don't let that be you. All right. I feel like I've blabbed on for a long time. I hope this was helpful for you. How I would want to close this out is that you've heard it said, it's never too late to start. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is today. And there is a lot of truth to that. But as we get older and some of these health problems and disease does add up, eventually it does become too late. And so my encouragement to you is that no matter where you are, it's never too late to start trying to improve yourself. But there does come a point, if you neglect yourself for a long enough period of time, you may never get back to what I would consider a natural state of health and fitness and ability. And so start today, start small. We can't change everything overnight. This stuff it's a process. Change is hard, and you can't change everything at once. You got to change one or two things at a time. That's how almost 99% of the people who are successful at this for the long term, that's how they do it. One or two baby steps at a time. They get something down, and then they move on to something else. They get something to the point where, okay, I can maintain that. I've figured out the exercise piece. Now I'm going to move to the nutrition piece. And then they figure that piece out, and it's like, all right, I'm going to move to sleep. I think you should actually do it in the opposite order. Focus on sleep. You're going to get your most bang from your buck with sleep. After that, I could go either way on nutrition or physical training, depending on who you are and what your needs are. But it's never too late. Make sure you're setting realistic goals and expectations for yourself. Don't put your expectations way up here and get really discouraged when you don't meet them, because that's just a fact of life. We all want more than we usually can get at any one time. It's really hard to delay gratification. We want it all right now. And so set realistic goals, and then stay consistent. Find a way to do the stuff you got to do day in and day out, whatever that means for you. For me, that's baby steps. That's make myself an offer I can't refuse. I am 90 to 100% sure I can do this every day that I need to. That's what the plan needs to entail for me. And I would also say anticipate challenges, anticipate setbacks. Life happens. I don't know about you, but for me, pretty much every day for the last several years or more, something has happened that has had the potential to throw me off my plan. I'm a planner, a very structure, system, and processes type person, and I understand a lot of people aren't like that, but life happens to everybody, whether you have a plan or not. And so we all need to have a plan B for when life happens, and also give ourselves grace when life happens, and understand that that's just a normal part of life. And trying to strive to achieve any goal is that obstacles are gonna arise, challenges are gonna arise, and you need a way to get through those. And to expect them to happen. Expect yourself to fail. Expect yourself to fall off the wagon, and have a plan for when that does happen. Man, I don't even know how long I've been sitting here talking. Way too long. Yeah, I see the clock over there. Way too long. But if you listen to this, man, you're the best. I really appreciate you. I hope something I shared with you was helpful. And we're all in this together. Like, life is a journey. I don't have this all figured out. I've learned some things over my lifetime, and I hope that some of the things I shared today were helpful. And I just really appreciate you and your time. And if you like the video, please let me know. And like I said, I'd love to make more videos like this in the future. I have a lot of ideas, things I'd like to do. I have a little less time than I used to. I've got more responsibilities than I did when I was making a lot more YouTube videos, but I'd like to make more. And so if you give me some of those likes and some of that love, maybe I'll see that it is making an impact, which is why I would do it. I'm not doing this for my own ego. I'm doing it for you because I care about helping people, and I care about passing on things that others have passed on to me that have helped me with my life. So thank you again, and maybe I'll see you in the next video. Oh my gosh, got old man knees.